This video will dissect award-winning director Danny Boyle's filmography and also consider the question whether through Boyle's direction, can we consider him as a modern auteur? Daniel Francis Boyle was born on the 20th of October 1956 to a religious left-wing working-class family. He attended Bangor University, studying English and drama, resulting in a career at the Joint Stock Theatre Company, where he eventually would be directing plays. He then ventured into the BBC, directing and producing various shows which would influence his future projects by creating high-quality content for low cost. It was then that he read the script of Shallow Grave and approached screenwriter John Hodge and producer Andrew MacDonald. Shallow Grave is the story of three deeply unpleasant housemates who discover that their flatmate is lying dead in his room next to a large suitcase of money. This trio of feature film first-timers shook up what was expected of mainstream British cinema at the time. Films that were tastefully made, well-acted, period-piece adaptations were expected by critics and public alike, and so they made a film which Boyle describes as dispensed with the moral baggage that British films carry around all the time. Despite having a restrictive budget, the collaboration and harmony of the trio's vision creates a film that feels confident in its narrative drive. This film comments on British society at the time, embedded in post-Thatcherite decay in Britain, idolizing greed, pleasure, selfishness, individualism, and the worship of money. From the commercial and critical success of Shallow Grave, Boyle, Hodge, and MacDonald would again collaborate on a film that would become a timeless cultural icon that would change British cinema forever. Boyle adapts the story of Trainspotting, based on the Irvine Welsh novel. It is a celebration of youthful energy against the background of heroin addiction that warps everything in which comes into contact. The film is a cultural icon, embracing, like Shallow Grave, the post-Thatcherite state of Britain. The film today retains a timeless quality, as Boyle states when commenting on the film.
I think the costumes are kind of timeless. Because you look at it now and they look cool, they still look fine. You know, they don't look idiotic like like normally you do when you look back on a film 15 years later.
Through the main character Renton, played by Ian McGregor, we see the corrosive effect his friends and addiction have on his life, as he has to decide on whether to forsake his so-called friends in order to rid himself of the life-sapping cycle of drug addiction. The characters are presented as drug consumers, paralleled to a capitalistic system with its own rules and dependencies. This can be seen as a reason why that Renton, when embracing the post-Thatcherite lifestyle after getting off drugs, adapts almost instantly to the world of real estate, as it has its own systematic similarities to the world he inhabited when a drug addict. The worst toilet in Scotland sequence acts as a metaphor for Renton succumbing to his drug addiction. Most people, when in a situation where they most urgently need a toilet, are ultimately relieved to find one regardless of its physical niceties. This is the same with Renton. However, the not-addict would have just left the toilet with his business being done whilst being relatively unsullied. But Renton, the addict, finds himself being drawn into immeasurably deeper degradation. And so Brian Eno's Deep Blue Day plays as Renton dives into the toilet with little hesitation. The mise-en-scène changes from a grotesque brown mess to a dreamy Nirvana album cover. As he goes deeper, Renton passes sea mines, representing the danger his addiction poses. As Renton heads back, the toilet acts as a light source, as his emergence represents his belief that he has been spiritually reborn by recovering this pill. This is further enforced through his belief that through this one hit, he will start the process of stopping his addiction. The audience, however, seeing to what degrading lengths Renton goes to retrieve his drug, no otherwise. The scene itself can be seen as a metaphor for taking the drug itself. On the outside it seems as a grotesque, corrosive thing, but on the inside it is as Renton says.
Take the best orgasm you ever had, multiply it by 1,000 and you're still nowhere near it.
From the huge success of Trainspotting, the future looked extremely bright for director Danny Boyle, and so he delved into the Hollywood market. Boyle would collaborate again with Hodge and MacDonald to adapt Alex Garland's The Beach. Again, Boyle thinks of the potential success Hollywood can offer and casts Leonardo DiCaprio as the lead actor. This, however, caused studio interference affecting the final product. A lot of people attribute this to the film not being faithful to the source material. For example, the book could be seen as a metaphor for communism. The book also explores themes of paradise versus reality, as it is revealed that the paradise is actually one side of the island, and on the other are drug traffickers. These complex and divisive themes were ultimately derived and sidelined for a studio-manipulated film that would reach for the lowest common denominator. After this flop, Boyle came to the conclusion that he worked better on modestly sized budgets where he could have more creative freedom, and went back to making television. Boyle would collaborate with now screenwriter Alex Garland to make a film which is credited with reinvigorating the zombie genre of horror. It was met with critical and commercial success, and was the first widely successful release for a movie filmed on digital, which brought digital into the mainstream. Boyle's next film was Sunshine, where he collaborated again with Alex Garland to, like in 28 Days Later, make a genre film which doesn't fully fit into the genre. Despite the movie being somewhat a commercial flop and being critically scrutinized about its third act, it is still an ambitious movie dealing with philosophical dilemmas and man's place in the universe, and has garnered somewhat of a cult following. Boyle's next film, adapted from Vikas Swarop's novel Q&A, takes Boyle to Mumbai with talented child actors for Slumdog Millionaire. The story follows Jamal, who is a teenager raised in the slums, on the verge of becoming a millionaire. It is revealed as Jamal explains to the police officer, who believes he is cheating, that he knows the answers posed by the quiz show through his unlikely life experiences. Film theorist Noel Carroll developed the idea that, although commonly used in the context of horror films, the posing of questions is what makes a narrative engaging. Slumdog Millionaire is structured to this theory, as each answer results in a question that pushes the narrative. This Q&A format gives the film a narrative drive that keeps the viewer on edge. Slumdog Millionaire was a critically acclaimed and commercial success, winning 8 Oscars and another 143 wins and 120 nominations. This would give him the studio backing to make whatever film he wanted next, which he decided to be 127 hours.
In 2010 emerged one of Danny Boyle's most shocking films, 127 Hours, inspired by a true story based on Aaron Ralston's book Between a Rock and a Hard Place, which Boyle had read in 2006. The story is about Aaron, a mountaineer alone in Utah who becomes trapped with his arm stuck between a boulder and the canyon wall. He has to make a tough decision to survive. Boyle wanted this film to be an action film about a guy who can't move. Because the majority of the film is set in the canyon, the production designer, Sudarat Lalab, who has worked with Danny Boyle numerous times, worked hard to create an exact replica of the canyon to film in. She did not allow any of the walls to move. This made restrictions for the crew, however gave a more realistic documentary-type feel to the film. This created a heightened sense of realism within the film. The beginning of the film and the end of the film show a large or excessive use of water. Boyle does this to subconsciously make the viewers feel for Aaron's thirst during his entrapment. 127 Hours was a bold move for Danny Boyle, and not necessarily the wrong one.
Steve Jobs, Danny Boyle's most recent film, dramatizes the life of Steve Jobs at 3 different launches throughout his career. One interesting aesthetic choice was changing formats between 16mm, 35mm, and digital for each one of the respective 3 acts. In the first act, based in the year 1984, the release of the Apple Macintosh, Jobs sees himself as a rebel and punk changing the industry. 16mm gives this loose, rough, and homemade feel which exaggerates where Jobs is in his life. The second part is set in an opera house in San Francisco. This act is based when he has been exiled out of Apple and wants to win Apple back, and thus the setting and music affirms the theme of this act as Jobs' revenge opera, further accented by the rich and liquid nature of 35mm. The third act is based in 1998 at the launch of the iMac. The iMac was the machine that brought the internet to everyone's home. The digital format reflects the arrival of the future. The three different formats together help convey the transformation from the young computer rebel to the man behind the sleek and stylish devices created by Apple today. Another aesthetic choice was the decision to film in San Francisco. Boyle believes, as he learnt from Slumdog Millionaire in Mumbai, if you pay respect to a city where a film is based, it gives back to you. The decision to film in San Francisco adds fidelity to the film, which would otherwise be lost. All Danny Boyle films contain a celebratory, life-affirming tone, opting for the positive over the negative. This can be shown in Sunshine, where the film concludes with the success of the mission to reignite the sun, which suggests that Boyle has an optimistic view of human destiny. This is also seen in Trainspotting, where Renton exclaims at the end, although perhaps sarcastically, that he'll change for the good. Again, in 127 Hours, where Aaron, in addition to surviving a likely fatal ordeal, has changed his life for the better by embracing the ones he loves. And again in Steve Jobs, where he admits that he's poorly made and opens himself up to his daughter. Danny Boyle's films are each individually unique and brave in choices of genre, narrative, character, and direction style. An example of this bravery can be seen in Sunshine. Commenting on the film, he says the interesting thing is that the more commercial sci-fi films like Event Horizon or Alien tend to go for hell and space. Maybe it's more ambitious to aim for heaven. All his films are in forward momentum, reveling in the energy of their central characters. The protagonists are commonly flawed and at times delusional, but also figures of hope and redemption. Additionally, they tend to be exceptional human beings. Kappa in Sunshine is implied to be a genius physicist. Jim in 28 Days Later survives a zombie apocalypse while also retaining his humanity and protecting the ones he cares about. Aaron in 127 Hours survives insurmountable odds through his skills and willpower. Alex in Shallow Grave and Renton in Trainspotting respectively use their wits to outsmart their friends. This also includes Jamal in Slumdog Millionaire, as although he is ordinary through his socio-economic position, wherein how he lives, what he dreams about, and even how he reacts to what happens around him, he is elated from the premise of extremely unlikely social realism to the status of myth/legend. Although Danny Boyle films may have reoccurring actors, common themes, reoccurring protagonist traits, and have collaboration with certain writers, the concept of auteurism is not applicable, as he is not the sole creative artist. Pauline Kael, in her 1971 essay Raising Cain, criticizes auteur theory and consequently Orson Welles' status as auteur. Though Orson Welles may seem as the ultimate source of the creative vision in Citizen Kane, she points out the distinctive talents of co-writers Herman J. Mankiewicz and D.P. Greg Holland and how the film made use of them. Similarly, Boyle's work seems to be positively excessive in collaboration. This is further shown through Boyle in the commentary for Sunshine, as he refers to the actors as mini-directors who, although may have to be overruled sometimes, come as the source for the best ideas. In conclusion, although Boyle films may be identifiable by certain traits, his films are the product of collaboration with deep respect for story. His films have become generational icons, and he has become arguably one of the greatest British directors of all time.